Hey guys, so this is the case study in this chapter, and I think it's a good exercise to show off what you guys learned so far in this class, right? So let's take a look at the app on the right. So this app allows you to upload data file, and then some simple cleaning, do some cleaning here, and then it allows you to download the processed data. Okay, so there are three sections. So if you look at the code on the left, you have there's three different sections of UI. So first we have UI upload, and note that it has sidebar layout. So there's a sidebar panel on the left for inputs, and then main panel on the right for outputs, right? And then there's a second sidebar layout that's for cleaner data here. Again, sidebar layout, and then we have the last section at the bottom to download data file. And then we see here familiar fluid page function that combines all three, right? And then on the server side, again, there are three different sections. The first section to upload a data file, and then the second section to clean them, the last section to download. So first, we create this raw reactive values, right? There's a reactive function, and then we render table. So that is what we have here. Oops. All right. Sorry about this. Let's go back to right. So with that code right there, we create reactive value and name it raw, and then we need to print that here. Okay, we need to print that raw data, and that is why we have a render table function using that raw reactive value. And then the second section, cleaning section, we again have reactive function here to create this reactive value of tidied. So tidied use raw reactive value, and there's a three if functions. That is because we have these three yes or no type of questions. Rename columns to snake case, yes or no. Remove constant columns, yes or no. Remove empty columns, yes or no, right? And that's what goes into this if condition, right? And then that reactive value tidied going into render table function here. And so again, that is what will be printed here in the second section of main panel. And then the last part in the server function is to download. So we see the function download handler function that we learned in this chapter showing up here, right? So there are two arguments in this function, file name and content. Okay, and the content is a function that takes a file variable and see that tidied reactive value is what we are downloading. Okay, all right, so let's do this in our studio. All right, so let's first create a file. So it's a section 3, and let's delete everything. And shiny app, there you go. And then let's look at the UI. So my strategy is um, build because the app has three sections: raw data, and then cleaner data, and then download button. I'm gonna build um, section by section. So first section, second, and third that way. All right. So the raw data section. So we have this upload button and these three pieces of information that we need to collect: delimiter and rows to skip and rows to preview. So we can see that the last two is numeric input, and delimiter is a text input. So we can see that function here, text input, and upload button, again, file input, right? And then there's a raw data title. We use a H3 function, okay? And then in the code, we can see that this is a sidebar layout, okay? All right, let's do this. Okay, fluid page, sidebar layout, right? And then we have sidebar panel function, right? And then we have main panel function, right? And then again, we have one, two, three, four functions. So first, upload button here, file input. So file input. So you can see that file input, there are two mandatory arguments, input ID and label, right? So file input, input ID, let's call it file. And then what was the label? Upload dot dot dot. Oh, the data that shows up here, right? That's label. And you also need a button label here, which isn't mandatory. So hold on. So for this data, that's label, and button label, download dot dot dot. Okay, and let's see. All right, so we have data as a label and the button label, download dot dot dot, right? Download dot dot dot. Okay, and let's provide a server function here for that upload. Okay, so um, oh, before that, right? So here, we need to provide output ID. So the output here is raw data, and we're gonna print the table of the uploaded data file. Okay, and then we're gonna name it preview one, and also we need this raw data title for the section. Okay, all right. So here we're gonna have preview one for app ID, and then we're gonna have the section title using H3 function. What was it? Raw data. Raw data. Is it uppercase D? No, it's lowercase d. Okay. And then we're gonna have output, or is it table output? Table output. Output ID is preview one. Right. So here, so table output. So if you look at the shiny cheat sheet, table output, the pairing function on the server side is render table, right? Render table, render table, and we need an expression for that. So that would be input and file, right? So let's try this, see what we get. And then so now we have the section title raw data here, and let's upload a file, hypothetical file that I created for this exercise, hypothetical data. And then this is what we get. And we've seen this before, right? So what I want to demonstrate here is this uploaded file. The information that we have here, input file, looks like this. There's a name column, and then size, and the type, and data path. So I want to draw your attention to name and data path, and that is what we're going to use later on in this exercise. Okay, so we have a name like this, hypo underline data.csv. That's the name, right? And the data path includes, in addition to this name, it includes the directory of this data file. Okay, so there's a data path. Which, I mean, this is temporary, so I mean, it will be replaced. It'll be replaced with the data path that we are going to provide later on in the download button. Okay, all right. So we need to add these three other pieces of information: delimiter, which is a text input, right? And then rows to skip, rows to preview. Those are numbers, numeric input. Okay. So let's close this app. And then here, comma, text input. And so here we have input ID and label as a mandatory argument. So input ID for this, what do you want to call it? Oh, delim. Delim. And the label, we have a very long label here. Delimiter, leave blank to guess. So delimiter, leave blank to guess, right? So, yep, did we get everything right? Delimiter, leave blank to guess. Delimiter, leave blank to guess. All right. And The next one is how many rows to skip, numeric input. And so here we have input ID, label, and value. So three mandatory arguments. They're mandatory because there's no default value provided or assigned. Okay, right. So let's name skip, and the label is rows to skip, and default value is 0. So rows to skip, and default value is 0. So let's, oh, and that's number. So can put in quotation. There you go, right? So we can change, but the default value is 0. Okay. The last one, again, this is also numeric input. Input ID, what do we want to put? The rows to preview. So rows and rows to preview, and the value here, default value 10, right? And then run app. So there you go. Is it same? Yeah, it looks the same. So let's provide a server function here, right? So now, all right. So the delimiter is a text input, and a blank is possible. Okay, and we're gonna treat that as null, and that's a little more complicated. So let's tackle easier one first. Okay, so let's look at skip. Okay, so we need a function to actually import this data, right? Because this input $ file just it just have information about the data file, but it doesn't have actual data. Okay, so what we want to do here is vroom and vroom. Okay, and you can see that the first argument, which is mandatory, is file, right? And so file. So let's close this and let's bring up the documentation. So vroom, vroom. So file here, either a path to a file or literal data. So remember when we printed the information about the data file, right? The fourth column, the last column on the far right was data path. That is what we need to provide for file argument here, okay? And we also have skip argument. The default value is 0, but then we want to replace this 0 default value with the user input. The same with rows to preview. So rows to preview that we're going to use head function later. So let's focus on how many rows to skip. That's a skip argument. Okay, so here for file argument, we're going to provide input and then file and then $ to extract that data path. Okay, and then we're going to use skip argument. So again, here we're going to use user input and input ID is skip, right? So let's see what happens with this. Okay, so output ID matches and the file that's input ID skip, skip. All right, so let's run app. All right, note that we have error here. We didn't even upload a file yet, but we already see an error message. That's because um, this app is initialized to null. So what we need to do here is we need to have the app wait until we upload. Oh, by the way, download. Uh, this should be upload, right? All right. Yeah, upload. Yeah, so we need to have the app to wait until we actually upload a file, right? So now we're seeing this error message already. So when we actually upload the file, the error message will go away. But we don't want that error message, right? So oh, by the way, this data that I just uploaded um, is a hypothetical data file that I created for this exercise. Okay. All right. So let's go back here. So if we were to change the skip, You see how the column name is gone, and the data in the first row moved up to the column names because we told app to skip the first row. So first row is this column names, and we are not seeing the column names anymore, right? So this argument is there in room function because sometimes in data file, in the first row, we have something other than column names. Okay. All right. So how do we address this issue of error when we open the app? So we're going to use the active function and a function called require to have the web to have the app to hold up, right? All right. So um, we are going to put raw, make a reactive value, okay? And we're going to copy this and put it here in reactive value, okay? Um, and we're going to require input file. So what that means is this is to hold off execution of the code until file is uploaded, okay? And down here, we're going to put raw reactive value, okay? So let's try this again. Reload. Now error message is gone, right? And now, okay, let's upload hypothetical data again, right? And then skip. There you go. Skip 2 rows. There you go. All right. But how many rows to preview? It doesn't do anything because we need to add more function here. So what we can do here for this how many rows to preview is we can use head function here. Okay. So head function, and head function has an argument n, right? So what was the default value? Default value is 10. So, oh, right. So here, this is input, user input. So here we have this rows, input ID is rows, and the default value is provided here, 10, right? Okay, so let's reload. Okay, so let's upload hypothetical data, and let's say I only want 2 rows. There you go. Okay. And the last one here is delimiter. Delimiter is so how each fields or columns are separated. So again, if we were to go back to this room function documentation, there is room. Where is the lim argument? Oh, okay. So right here, the second argument is the lim. Um, the the default value is null. So here, if you look at the documentation under arguments, delim one or more characters used to delimit fields within a file. So fields are the same as columns. So if null, the delimiter is guessed from the set of one of these, comma, tab, white space, and any of these. Okay. So the data that hypothetical data set I'm using. So desktop. This is CSV, comma, separated values. So delimiter in this case is comma, okay, the very first case. So what happened was when we start the app and uploaded the file, the Shiny using this room function um, imported the data file, but this delim argument wasn't specified. In other words, it defaulted null, and if null, then the delimiter is guessed, and it guessed comma. That's basically what happened. Okay, so R is smart to know what type of delimiter the file has. Okay, so right now we do have this input, but if we put comma, it doesn't work, right? Because we didn't add the code in the server side. Okay, so let's do that. So how do we do this? So the important part here is we can't just put, delim argument here and then input, and then, oh, the input ID is delim, because if the user leaves this input as nothing, right? Then this will run into an error. So let's try this. So now we don't have anything provided here, and then import the data, right? So what we wanted to see is we wanted the app guess correctly. In other words, guess comma, so that it imports the data correctly, but it doesn't. So now if we provide comma, then it does it right. So what we want to do is we want to provide, when we don't put anything here, um, we want the Shiny intelligently guess the delimiter, right? In other words, it needs to be initialized with null. Okay. So what we need to do here, instead of putting, so I mean, I guess you could say, why don't we put null here then? So that doesn't work, because when the user types in null, that is a text, right? But that is, which is different from the null that R uses. Okay, so that can't be text. That's why we can't use this here. So this doesn't work. So what we need is here. So we need this. We need if condition, and then we need to define this delim, right? So if user does not put anything, right? There's nothing. Then it takes null. Otherwise, whatever the user entered, input $delim. Okay. So we're gonna delim, and then if condition here is input delim is nothing, user didn't provide anything, then delim should take null, or else it should be delim, right? Or else meaning that user provided something, user entered something such as comma, right? So now we run it. So now we upload hypothetical data, right? Um, so this is comma separated value type. So it guessed correctly, right? Now if I manually input comma is the same thing, right? But we put, say, tab separated. I guess that also works. All right. Okay. So now it's all good. It's working correctly. Okay. So first section is complete. Right. So let's tackle the second part. All right. So let's look at the app. Okay. So there are three pieces of information that we're collecting from the users: rename columns to snake case, remove constant columns, and remove empty columns. So um, this is hypothetical data that I created for this exercise. So note that I have a column name with a white space between two words, student and ID. The reason for that is, oftentimes when we code, we want variable names in one word with no space. So often if original column name has white space between words, we want to replace white space with, say, underline. So it is one word. Okay. And also sometimes, one column name is uppercase, all uppercase, and another column name is all lowercase, and it's inconsistent. So we want them to be in a standard format, right? And also see that one column has no values at all, address, and also gender has a constant values, right? So when we do analysis, so for example, correlation analysis, what we want to see is, let's say we want to predict the values of GPA, student GPAs, right? And the question might be, a gender plays a role in determining student GPA. In other words, is there any significant difference between male students and female students in GPA, right? Now, if all the values is constant, in this case, all male, there's no female students at all, then this variable is useless, right? So we often drop out variable with constant values, and also we may drop out variable with no values at all, empty, right? And that is basically what we're doing. That's the free cleaning test, right? So putting column names in standard format and removing constant columns like gender in our hypothetical data set and removing empty columns, right? Okay, so this is our yes or no input. So that would be, so if you look at the inputs column in the cheat sheet, so that would be here, check me. It's either checked or not checked, yes or no. So that's checkbox input, okay? And checkbox input function, there are two mandatory arguments, input ID and label. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so in here, so let's close the app for now. And we need another sidebar layout. Sidebar layout function. And then inside we need a sidebar panel function and then main panel function, right? And inside sidebar panel, so again, this is a narrower column, right? So we want to put inputs, right? So these yes or no questions. So again, check box input ID and label. So input ID, yeah, snake, and what's the label? Rename columns to snake case. Rename columns to snake case question, and then another checkbox input, and this constant. Remove constant columns. Constant. Remove constant columns question. The last one, checkbox input. What is it? Oh, empty columns. Empty. Remove empty columns. Columns. Question, right? And in the main panel, we want to print cleaned data, and there's a section header, cleaner data. So here, main panel, H3, clean data, and then table output and output ID. Let's do preview 2. And in the server function, so we're going to work with this raw reactive value, right? So the good practice in coding, the organization, when an app gets complicated and long, the organization is really important. So here, let's say raw. So we can easily separate different sections here. And clean. Okay. And then, so let's again create reactive value. Reactive. So we're going to use, so let's call out, and initially, so this is a result of clean data. We name it out. And initially that will be raw. The starting point will be raw. And then we're going to use if function, okay, to process yes or no inputs. There are 3 of them from the users, right? And in the end, whatever that's processed, we'll take that out and we store that in tidy. So tidy will be a reactive value, and we do the same thing. This, okay. So at the end, we need to print it. So we need output preview 2 because that's how we named it, output ID, right? And we want to render table because it's a table output. And here, so actually, this doesn't need to be in 3 different rows, right? Oops. So we can put it in one row here, right? So here the same thing. So in this case, instead of raw reactive value, we're going to print tidy. Don't forget to put parentheses here. to mean reactive values, right? And then what is it? N, the same rows, right? So now here we start with raw data. So now condition. So let's first work with snake case. So the function, the package that we're going to use is janitor package. This is a package that is very popular for data cleaning. Okay, so there's a function called um, clean names. Okay, so clean names takes the data, so data argument, so input data frame. Okay, so here what we're going to do is, so snake is input ID. So the condition here will be input snake. So because this is yes or no, right? So snake here represents yes or no, and so the body of this if condition is uh, so out is processed um, both janitor and clean names, and then we provide out, right? So okay, right. So why do we have X here? Unexpected token curly bracket. This curly bracket matches that. Um, did I not understand? So hold on. Oh, okay. All right. So this, I don't know. Um, I mean, I'm using different different function. Make clean names. I think that is not necessary. We can just use clean names function. I'm trying to see why. Oh, it just went away. This X sign, so everything's fine. Yeah, I didn't know why there was X sign there. Okay, so let's run app. Right, so let's import our data file here. Right. So I want to have just 5 rows. Now, if I want to process these column names, check. There you go, right? So it's all lowercase, the column names, and also the white space between student and ID is replaced with underline, right? Very good. Now we need to work on the second and the third. Let's look at the constant columns. So what we want to do is we want to remove this gender column. In other words, we want to give our user the ability to drop this column with the constant values. So we can do the same thing, keep doing the same thing here. So here, another if condition, and we can add body of the if condition. The condition will be constant, right? If this constant condition is yes, then do this. Then do what? There we go. Janitor, and drop the constant. So remove constant from out. Okay, so let's reload. Okay, upload data file. Okay, too many rows. Right, so I'm gonna change default uh, preview rows to 5. I don't have to change it. Right, so reload app, upload data file. Right, that's easier. So now check snake case, check remove constant columns. So it also deleted this address column as well. That's also, it doesn't have any values, right? It's empty. That's also considered as constant. Okay. All right. So last one, remove empty columns. All right. So let's work on that. So again, include another if condition, and that is empty. And the condition is output is redefined as janitor, remove, empty, and then out. And we need to provide this columns. So which COLS columns. Okay. All right. So we try this again. So upload the data file, snake case, yes, and then empty columns. So drop address, remove constant columns. Very good. It works as it should. Now we need to add um, the download button. Okay. So, so the third section. So let's start with UI. So another. So this one is not a sidebar layout. It's just one button. So it's one row. So what we can do, fluid row, and we can just add a button. So we've seen this download button, function, and it requires output ID. Um, but that's the only one, only mandatory because all the other arguments has a default value, right? So download, right? So download button, and then default ID. The output ID we want to put is let's say download, okay? And then let's see what happens. All right. So the only thing is, it. So here, it takes the whole row. Here, it's only a button. So if we want to make it the same, what we can do is there's a class argument and btn button block. Okay, and there you go. So there's a download button taking the whole block. So this class argument, we've seen this in our textbook. This is chapter 2, basic UI. So there's action buttons and class argument by using one of these values, right? So we can, I believe we can add this. How do we add this? Oh, so we can keep adding inside the quotation mark. So for example, if we want color, say, what are the values? Primary, for example, primary, and then reload that. Oh, okay. So that changed color, but so will the order make a difference? Hmm. So I guess it only takes one, um, one argument. I mean, one value here, either primary or block, but can't be both. Um, but it does take the size argument here. So btn large, for example. So let's try that here. Whether that would work. btn large, is that it? Oh, LG. All right. So btn block, this does not work um, with other values. Okay, so it should just be btn block. But for the others, so for example, btn large and btn primary, this should work together. Um, hmm, there's an order matter. Okay, btn success. Hmm. Yeah, for whatever reason, action button for download button, um, it doesn't seem to take more than one value here for the class argument, right? But it does for other like action button, but not for download button. Okay, so let's just leave it as well, not large. It's block. All right, so that's that. So in the server side, so download. So we need to add output download and download handler, right? So I mean, we've seen this many times by now. File name and content, right? So file name, so it should be a function with no argument. So here, um, file name is paste 0, and so what we want to put here is um, we want to take. Remember what I showed you at the beginning of this video. input $ file, it has four pieces of information. It starts with name and then size and then was it type? The last one was a data path, right? So here, what we want is name, but without extension. So the function that we need is from tools package. What was it? Oops. A file path sends extension. So file, yep. So right here. So we have file path sends extension. That's the one that extracts name without extension. So let's see details here. So file path sends extension returns the file path without extensions, right? So that is what we want. So here we need tools, package, file, path, sends extension, and we need to provide file and then name, all right? And then we want to limit it to tab separated values as we discussed before. And we need content argument, and this is also a function that takes file as one argument. And so we need to export this again using broom package, broom broom write function, and we want to export this um, tide reactive value. Okay, so tide and don't forget parentheses to indicate that it is reactive value and the file. So file that we define here in the file name argument, right? Um, right, I think that is it. So let's run app. So let's import the hypothetical data file and snake case, drop empty columns, drop constant columns. So now if we want to download this clean data, download hypothetical data, now we can say it's clean, and then we can download in downloads folder. Then we go to downloads folder. So there you go. Hypothetical data clean. So it has only student ID and GPA column, right? In tab separated value file format. All right. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next video.